started with the rest of our meeting.
Whoever brought this, thank you.
I'm going to call to order the balance of the Board of Selectmen's meeting. If we could have quiet in the room. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
We'll just skip recognition for the moment.
Outside, please, for conversations. We have recognition. Ms. Braga. Sorry.
That's okay. I just got back, just drove in just a moment ago.
Oh, Mike, sorry.
Oh.
It's the push button one, sorry. Oops, I can't even reach it from here. Okay, good.
That's good.
Okay. Thank you. Just a quick celebration to say thank you to, I know that the schools and the public safety individuals sent out notices and made Halloween a safe experience for a lot of kids in our town. There are a number of community churches that held trunk or treat, and so just want to recognize those are some of the fun things that the children get to do, makes it a special town to live in. We heard folks talking about making this a place for young people, and that's certainly one of those events. Halloween is a fun holiday for so many, and it went off without any, knock on wood, without any hitch, so.
Excellent. Announcements from anyone on the board. Mr. Suso, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to confirm an important community tradition. We have our annual Veterans Day observance that will be Sunday, November 11th at 11 a.m. On the library lawn with the ceremonial procession immediately preceding it from the town common. And we look forward to that extraordinary gathering this year, as we do every year. We thank the Veterans Committee and our Veterans Department for their fine work, and we look forward to everyone joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Any other announcements?
Well, I don't know whether anybody's unaware of it, but please don't forget that tomorrow is voting day for the elections coming up. So if you haven't voted early, please get out there and cast your vote.
Very important reminder. Anyone else? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. It's an opportunity for someone to speak for 2 minutes on an item that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone? Jane. If you can go to the mic, that would be great. Or oh, hold on. That'd be helpful, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, Jane F. Perry, Hatchville. I rise to stand before you tonight to ask you to put on your agenda after town meeting, hopefully the first of the year, to have a joint meeting with the planning board to discuss transportation, the transportation element, and what we need to do to ensure better enhanced transportation in this town. I'd like to thank all the people that came out tonight. It warms the heart and soul of me, who has been a transportation advocate since 1987 and has sit on several boards. We need the Transportation Management Commission to be re-established. I think this was a segue into that. Again, please let's make a first for the new year and get started on the right foot and get transportation enhanced. And thank you, Madam Chairperson, for your service to the Cape Cod RTA, and also to Mr. Patterson, who is our new representative. People need to be in touch with him. We have big-time, serious transportation issues in this town. And I really would like to be on any committee that has to do with transportation, because you know I live and breathe transportation. If it wasn't for my disability, I wouldn't be standing here or talking about transportation and being very passionate about it. I had an artificial heart valve replaced, and that's why I have not been involved, but I'm back. And I hope to make transportation a priority for next year. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the first item under summary of actions, administrative orders. Vote whether to approve $1,575 to be expended from Article 17 for the purposes of analyzing nitrogen content in shellfish harvested from Seapit River in 2018. This will take advantage of a process that's already going on in the area.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item is to vote to whether to approve the Town of Falmouth final fingerprint policy. This is an item we've received a lot of public comment on, and it's the final step in the process of which there was a vote taken at our last meeting.
One question.
Doug? You might have to push the button on your mic. Great.
I noticed a couple of clerical concerns, and I had sent a note to Mr. Suso. Has that been fixed in the final version?
Yes, subject to this, thank you, Selectman Brown. Yes, subject to this board's concurrence, there was a Scrivener's error that failed to show that the charge would be $30 for the state and $30 for the town. So with the concurrence of the board, that under the fees would be changed. And any clarification, if necessary, that this does not apply to the door-to-door solicitation, as has been discussed with the board previously.
Right. Thank you.
So would you like to make a motion to approve with those changes?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next item under business is interview, vote, and appoint committee member for the EDIC. Patty Haney is here. Ms. Haney, when you make it to the microphone, I will note for the board that Ms. Haney has already submitted her application and interviewed with the EDIC with a favorable recommendation, especially in view of the fact that the EDIC's mission does intersect. Of course, jobs are, have the preliminary requirement of having housing for folks to have those jobs, and Ms. Haney is a well-known expert in that area, and just want to thank you for your interest. If you'd like to maybe say a few words?
I think you said it. And it's also an opportunity for me to do something new and different. So that's it.
Appreciate that. Any questions from the board?
No, thank you.
Appointment of Patty Haney to a term on the EDIC. What does this term run until? Ending 6/30/2021.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you offering to give more time. The next item on the agenda is a presentation by the Department of Public Works on federal storm water requirements. Jim, have you rested up from running around with the microphone?
Sure. All I have to do is figure out how to use this.
Do you want to use this or go sit out there?
I just need to, Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jim McLaughlin, Town Engineer. And I'm here this evening to talk about the MS4 permit. And just as a little bit of background, has its origins in the Clean Water Act, which was passed in 1972. EPA was designated the authority to assure compliance with cleaning the nation's waterways, and they developed a national pollution discharge elimination system. They have a lot of acronyms and a lot of abbreviations. This one, NEPTES, is one that runs through a lot of different different industries and different things, from industrial waste, sewer treatment plants, construction sites. It covers a wide range of activities. The one that we're interested in is the MS4. It's a general permit that's administered jointly between EPA and Massachusetts DEP. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, so is M, 4 S's. And the effective date of the most recent permit is July 2018. Originally, it was supposed to go into effect in 2017, but there were a number of legal challenges, and so they postponed it for a year, but basically it's the same permit requirements that were negotiated and signed into a joint agreement between DEP and EPA back in 2017. The first thing required under the new permit is the filing of a notice of intent, NOI, and that was filed by the town at the end of September of this year. And what the NOI does is it goes through and puts EPA and the state on notice of what it is that we intend to do and how we intend to comply with the MS4 requirements. And the first thing is to prepare a stormwater management plan in this first year of the program. And the program is an 8 to 10 year program. And really it depends, I'm not sure if it starts in 2017 or 2018 because of that legal challenge, but it's a long-term program with a number of steps and a number of milestones to be met along the way. There are 6 what they call minimum control measures, MCMs, that we're required to address in our notice of intent and put together a plan for how we plan to address each of those 6 items. The first one is public education and outreach, and a lot of that is through the internet, FCTV. We did have some videos several years ago. We'll probably have to upgrade those and continue on with that, as well as pamphlets and brochures, some of which can be matched up with some of the licensing for animals, because a lot of it has to do with animal waste, as well as household waste and a number of other things. Second is public involvement, and that's where Public Works, as well as some of the other town authorities, will have meetings. For example, the Water Quality Management Committee would be one where we'd explain some of the things that we're doing, talk about some of the things that they're doing, and incorporate additional items for both of us to pursue. Number 3 of the MCMs is illicit discharge detection and elimination. And with that, and this program is it's really national, but statewide. So it's really some of the things that they include more directed towards much more urban areas where they have a lot of combined sewer and things like that. A lot of sump pumps where people are pumping into either a sewer system or a town drainage system. I think there's probably some of that in Falmouth, but not that much. But part of the program is to go through and identify all of the discharge points in town, map them, and start to look at where there may be some illicit discharges. And I think probably the more common one in Falmouth is where people pump out their basements right out into the street and add to the flooding sometimes in some of the public ways. MC4 is construction stormwater runoff control. That's one that's currently an issue with a lot of large-scale development in the private sector. And under this item, one of the things that the town is charged with is developing stormwater management plans or regulations that everyone in town would end up following. So when someone right now constructs a new home and adds a lot of impervious area or disturbs a lot of land, and there's a lot of erosion out into the street, there's very little authority on the town's part to regulate that. And We have a lot of instances of erosion and runoff clogging up our storm drains, as well as flooding out some of the neighboring properties. So this program is something that should be developed townwide, and actually it was required under the earlier permit. And we have some guidelines that we'll be looking to try and get implemented that address at the site plan review and building permit applications, where stormwater management will be part of the program going forward. And in a lot of cases with private construction, that's already an issue or a requirement. Anything over an acre that's disturbed requires a NEPDES permit. I don't think many people in Falmouth go to that extent. And most of the enforcement with EPA has been more on a national level, looking at large, probably 7 out of the 10 largest national home builders have been subject to enforcement action from EPA. A lot of the big box retailers like Home Depot, Walmart, those types of companies have been targeted for enforcement. But for the most part, they don't look at the small builders all that much, even though they're subject to the same requirements. So that's something that we should be including in our regulations going forward. Fifth is the post-construction management, and that involves as-bills and verifying that a lot of the things that were supposed to be done do get done. And then lastly, municipal good housekeeping, which involves things like street sweeping, catch basin cleaning. We have thousands of catch basins, and putting together a system of maintaining all of those basins and making sure that they're all working. And I have just a quick little example of some of these things that we've implemented on the recent project on White's Landing Road. And on White's Landing, so this is Route 28, and this is the boat ramp down at the lower end, and the parking lots up here. What we've done is install a small little depressed area here that picks up a lot of the stormwater runoff on the parking lot and discharges it into, first through a CDS structure, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and then it goes into some chambers that discharge into the ground. We also have a drain system that runs down. Previously, everything just sheeted down the road and right into the water here. There are a couple of low paved waterways, basically, where the runoff would come down, follow the pavement as best it could, and then shoot out into the water here. And here we have additional CDS structures, and then outfalls into the water. And then lastly, down here, we built a water quality swale. And what happens here is in the turnaround area and in the backup area for the boat launch, these straight lines, triangles, are proposed contours. And basically what happens is the runoff runs perpendicular to the contours. So it runs down through here to a low spot here and into the swale, where it settles out and then eventually discharges out into the water. So this is the basin up at the top. It's a depression.
Hey,
Got a lot-
Jim,
Yes.
pardon me, but before you move on, there's just a question on the last slide, I believe.
Yep.
So the CDS, as you referred to, is that the same as like a pollution control structure, and it replaces the new storm drains, or is that something more advanced?
Yeah, so this is one of these CDS, and it can be either a catch basin or a drain manhole. And what happens is the inflow comes in a drain manhole in through here, goes around a little vortex type system, and the solids drop out into the bottom here, and the cleaner water goes up and out through the outlet here. So it's a type of system that's relatively common in Massachusetts now. It's been approved by DEP as one of these systems that removes a fairly amount, actually about 80% of the total suspended solids for first flush type events. In a 100-year storm, these, or even less, 25-year storm, these units would be overwhelmed, and there's a little wear in here so that when it gets to the really high flows, the water just goes over and goes right out the pipe. So it's really for that initial flush of water to try and, which is what most of the contaminants and the solids that are suspended in the runoff are in that first flush.
And if I could, and how often do you have to clean those?
These every year at a minimum, and some of them probably more often. I think as we install more and more of these, or other people install them, we're going to find as we start to clean them that some of them will require more frequent cleaning. And if they're not cleaned, basically they're ineffective and end up causing as much problem as having nothing, really.
Okay, thank you.
So so this is the first basin, and so what happens here, we've got stone and then some inlet, beehive inlets, and that goes into this CDS system and then is discharged into the ground. This is what one of them looks like. It's just a regular manhole. It's bolted down. This is at the outlet into the bay here, and just below this is a flared end section where you can see it here. So the water comes down. This is White's Landing Road here coming down. All the runoff is coming down. It's in catch basins, piped down to here. There's a CDS unit up here in the pavement, and then it discharges out into the water. So then the last item that we installed on the White's Landing is this swale. And as I mentioned, the runoff runs down this way and this way to this low point, and then settles out a lot of the solids in here as well as at the inlet here. This is all on the surface, and then there's a little forebay here. The water builds up, sediments settle out, and then it discharges directly out. And this is a picture of the swale itself discharging out into the water. And the next slide, you can see this is the inlet. This is the lowest point in the parking lot. You can see how the water travels down to this area, and also in from this area to this low spot. And what you'll also see here is the sediment here and sediment here. So what happens is, in a good-sized rain event, when there's a lot of runoff traveling across here, sheeting across the parking lot, when it gets here, it slows down, and a lot of the solids settle out, which is what it's supposed to do. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is what happens in terms of the good housekeeping part of our program is we have to go back and start to clean these up and remove all this sediment on a regular basis. And that goes for these types of structures, as well as the CDS units, which require a lot of maintenance in getting these solids removed out of here, and any of our normal catch basins, which also have sumps and a lot of solids that settle out into the sump area. So part of the good housekeeping program that we're required to put together is a plan for removing solids or cleaning up, maintaining all of our drainage structures, which we have a considerable amount, and having a plan to do that on a regular basis, as well as street sweeping and control of some of our snow removal and ice and salt and sanding type materials that we use, and having a regular plan for cleaning all of that also. And that's really the gist of what we have to do. And it goes, like, as I mentioned, it goes through close to a 10-year program. And part of in the latest stages, probably 7 or 8 years out, some of the already developed areas in town, we'll have to go back and look at adding or retrofitting some of the facilities that we have that have been in place for a long period of time with some of these types of best management practice type things to remove some of the sediment and the contaminants that are in the stormwater. And as we go forward with the mapping of all the outlets and monitoring the dry weather and wet weather discharges at those outfalls, there'll be areas that are identified as problem areas. We'll have to look at the entire watershed and try and isolate where some of the contaminants might be coming from. And this is all just related to stormwater and implementing some of these different programs like we've had on White's Landing for future work throughout the town.
Wow, you are really gifted at taking very complicated engineering information and making it practical so that everyone really gets what the implications are. 2 comments. One is, this seems like a very expensive federal mandate to put on the towns, just in terms of the maintenance, the future costs, the good housekeeping. I mean, I think that it's really worth noting this is going to be expensive, although, of course, we want to keep Cape Cod's water pristine. It's the foundation of our tourism industry and just healthy living. But the second comment I wanted to make is whether, you mentioned education, and I wonder if we could kind of put on the website maybe 2 frequently asked questions or something, one for contractors and one for residents of what to expect.
Yes, yep. We're in the process of engaging a consultant to help us go forward with this first year of the program. And I think there are a lot of the communities on the Cape are in a similar situation and are looking at doing a lot of those things. And there's going to be a lot of sharing of information. And one of the things, in addition to the website and some of the outreach that they're looking into, is the use of the county to do a lot of the testing, because quite frankly, we don't have the capability to take a lot of grab samples, and then we certainly don't have a laboratory to test them, where right now the county does that function or performs that function for us. For the landfill closure, they go out and they do a lot of monitoring and a lot of testing for us. I think the expectation is that a number of the towns, surrounding towns, will get together and form some type of a group to maybe work with them and get some decent pricing on doing that work going forward. The other thing is the sheer magnitude of the amount of outfalls that we have. It's really not possible for, even if everyone in Public Works went out and started getting samples, we wouldn't be able to keep up with all the outfalls that we have. So there's going to have to be some work that's subbed out, and hopefully we can use some economies of scale with some of the other communities to get some of those things done.
Great plan. Any other questions? Doug?
Just curious how the clean-out works. Is there some sort of vacuum pump
Yeah.
truck?
Yeah, so it'll be a vac system. Right now, we have one. I think, we'll probably, going forward, once we have a plan in place for the continuous maintenance, we'll definitely have to be subbing it out or looking at another machine. And as Madam Chairman pointed out, there's a lot of cost involved with this, which is why there was a fair amount of, I think, legal objection last year, and there was a few towns off Cape formed a consortium to challenge some of these requirements, and some individual towns did. I think the town of Franklin was one that sued EPA. But on the other side, there's a number of environmental groups like the Conservation Law Foundation, I believe. They also filed an appeal. So they have one side thinking we're doing too much, the other side thinking we're not doing enough. And as those things get ironed out, maybe some of these requirements will change. I don't expect that they will. I think my recollection of a lot of this and the question of it being an unfunded mandate dates back to really when the recession started back in 2008, 2009. There was a lot of talk about this being required, and there was a lot of objection, and there was a lot of delay in getting it forward. I think now it's finally get to the point where they've pushed it ahead. But there is a considerable expense going forward to comply with all these requirements.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Great presentation, important information, and we'll look for more details on the website.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mark, I didn't see if you could just quickly, just come up to the mic real quick in the front.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. I've asked this question 5 or 6 or 8 times at various wastewater meetings and at the county or whatever. Does the federal government have any number? Have they put any percentage on how much road water runoff or what percentage of the road water runoff is in the nitrogen loading in our bays and estuaries? Any idea whatsoever? 5%, 15%?
Well, I don't know if they have a specific number, but I think I've heard different estimates of the percentage of the impact that stormwater has versus things like septic systems. And the stormwater is generally in around the 20% range in terms of the magnitude of its impact. In that range.
Thank you. Good information. Next, we have on the agenda a presentation follow-up on Locust Field Affordable Housing Local Initiative Program application continued from October 29, 2018, where the board heard a presentation and also comments from the public, and then decided to extend the conversation to another meeting so that we could give the public an opportunity to email comments in addition to the comments that were heard on that date. The board has gotten copies of the comments. They've been collected. I know I asked the town manager if he'd had an opportunity to, give a general count of for and against, just so the public knows sort of the scale of the comments that we received. I don't know, Peter, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we had the Board of Selectmen received 19 comments in support. That was 7 via email and 12 via U.S. mail. I would point out that there are a lot of the same surnames appear. There were, I think, 7 of them came from 2 common names, for what that is worth. And there were 3 in opposition, 3 email messages in opposition.
Thank you. Is there any more information the board feels that it might need? I want to just note council is in the room if we have questions on the from the project side.
I don't have any more questions. I will say that it was surprising the amount of correspondence that we received in support of this project. And the couple that were opposed to it were generally in opposition to the idea of using that either farmland or the fact that it was inappropriate to have so many houses on a lot. So it wasn't direct opposition to the specifics of the project, other than just general opposition to the project. So I don't think we can really act on those concerns, and I give more weight to the people that were in support. I've also received phone calls personally in support of it, people saying that we need to increase housing opportunities for everyone, whether it's, a higher level of affordability or just more houses that are for working class type people. So I guess I'm going to say that I would have to respect those comments.
Ms. Braga?
Just one other comment, and we touched on this last time, that, it's not as if the option is not to build anything or to go forward with this project. It's privately owned. This project is being scaled back from what could potentially be placed on this piece of property if it went forward as a 40B project, or even, if someone were trying to develop it in a different way. So I think that we don't want to create a false choice here. It's not as if the board can somehow prevent this development from taking place. I know we touched on it, so I don't want to belabor it, but I just want to make sure if folks are just looking at it this time and weren't here or didn't watch the last meeting, this isn't a project that the town is putting forward on land that we own. This is a private project, and it's really a matter of supporting kind of what's the smaller scale that's being proposed by the developer, or the potential of not going forward and supporting it, and it may be being a very different development in its character and in the number of units.
Madam Chair?
Sam, please.
Yes. I think in terms of its qualification as a LIP program, local initiative program, I think we have to weigh on the fact that we don't have a lot of empty land on which to put projects like this. And I agree with what Megan is saying. I mean, we need to create housing so that there's a larger stock that's available to people that are providing us with the employees for town, for health services, for fire and rescue, police, teachers, and any number of other retail supervision types of positions where people have modest incomes, but really right now the stock is so tight. We've been informed that 2008 we had this wave of people who have a lot of wealth that just basically bought up second homes and taken them out of the market. And so this is an opportunity for us to, yes, it's a little bit denser than many other parts, although I have to say there are lots of subdivisions in this town where the density is about the same. It's not that inordinately dense. But this is an opportunity to get affordable housing, or at least housing that's going to increase the stock that's available into the town. And I don't think we should underestimate the importance of taking advantage of this kind of an opportunity.
Is there someone that wants to move the project?
Yeah, I would make a motion that we support the LIP application for this project.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
Oops, opposed?
Pardon?
So you didn't ask for the negative, so
No, it was.
you
thank
could hear the other side. Okay.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have minutes of meetings, the first being from the public session on September 17, 2018. Hold just for a moment. Is there a question? Come to the mic, sir.
Can you tell me why the...
Might you introduce yourself? I know we've heard you before.
Yeah,
through the
William
TV.
Marston, Locustville. But can you tell me why the meeting wasn't posted on the website? It's going to be held here. It was posted, it's going to be held at Main Street at 7 o'clock.
I believe it was posted here. This is a follow-up meeting of the Board
At
of
4
Selectmen.
o'clock, at 4 o'clock, it was posted, it's going to be at Main Street at 7 o'clock.
I can certainly ask. Let us look into that. Is there a...
We're happy to
posting
explore
of-
that.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be posted how many hours beforehand?
We'll look into that.
With the agenda.
And
Okay.
get back to you, if you would leave your contact info with the secretary.
Okay. And one other thing, you're talking about the affordable housing and the other houses at 400,000. It went from 400,000 to 425. There's at 100,000, there's well over 100 listed. At the 400,000, there's well over 100 listed in the town now.
In the town of Falmouth.
East Falmouth, just
East
East Falmouth, yes. There's already that many. If there's that many on the market, why is it such a big deal to want more? Are those lots too big?
I'm not going to respond specifically on those numbers, but the comments here were based upon the general need for housing. And some of those homes would be taken by second homeowners.
And if I could just.
Please.
What's going to stop these new ones from being taken by second homeowners?
They could be, but just, if I can just respond, that part of the project is for there to be those 3 separate affordable homes. So out of that 12, you're going to have 3 that are going to be priced at the 195.
Okay,
So that's adding to that stock, which we certainly don't have in Falmouth.
And how long would that price be held?
That's
Is
what-
that a lifetime,
Yes.
Yes,
no matter how many times it's sold?
That's a deed restriction.
to keep it as an affordable home.
Is that
There
the
are some
total
rules
deed
around that.
restriction?
I'm
That
sorry?
that it's forever?
It would be forever at the affordable level.
Okay. What about the one that the bank just took back and wanted to auction? Where is that at?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yep,
Please, Sam?
That deed restriction had a 30-year time limit. And so now they're going to be registered as in perpetuity. So for the length of that house as a property as it stands, that deed would be restricted to being affordable based on a schedule that is actually linked to the area median income.
Now, how did that did the town have to buy the house back?
No. I mean, I don't know, Peter, if you want to speak to this since
We're
you.
getting a little far from field. We'll answer this one last question.
We're looking down the road, yeah.
Sir, I'm trying to
No,
get you
that's-
the answer.
that's a fair
Are you familiar with that?
Just about deed restrictions in general, I think Mr. Marston was asking sort of for the process. So if something is deed restricted as an affordable home, number one, his question was, does that sort of, run out in terms of a timeline? And if so, what is the process? Does the town have to buy it back? So I know we've talked about this a little bit. If you could just
It's a complicated, and I apologize, I was looking into the question of the agenda posting. So the deed restriction, the procedures have improved since the development that was done about a decade ago. Those deed restrictions had some flaws in terms of expiring more easily. The current model that is used does survive foreclosure, and it provides for more realistic timelines. The short answer is that it does require some monitoring. There's fairly good ability to retain the affordability, but there is a potential scenario where a restriction could be lost. So that's why the
So there's
board's
no-
recently funded a housing coordinator position to help us be more responsive to that. And as to whether or not town funds are required, not necessarily, but potentially in some circumstances. It's just that complicated. It really, there are a number of different
So
scenarios
there's no
that could play
guarantee?
out. I'm
There's
sorry?
no guarantee that these would be a lifetime thing?
Yeah, I can't say that there's an absolute lifetime guarantee, that's correct, but it certainly, there are a lot of means to preserve the affordability, so it certainly does
So-
add to the affordable housing stock for a considerable period of time.
So we'd make this big mess for nothing if they go out of it, right?
I'm going to take that as a rhetorical question.
Well, you said yes to it. Right.
So there are a lot of people who feel that the entire development is very positive for the town.
It's very what?
Very positive for the town because it creates new housing, both deed restricted and non-deed restricted, all of which adds to the supply, which is
And what
very
I
needed.
don't understand is if you're saying that we're low on housing, but there's so many on the market.
Yeah, I don't know how far we want to carry out this debate, but,
Yeah.
certainly
What do you
region-wide.
want to have, like 400 or 500 on the market?
Region-wide, you know, many analysts have said there is a dearth of available housing. And, you know, that doesn't mean the number's zero, but there are people who are unable to work here because they cannot find affordable housing.
And I'm going to end the discussion.
Again, there's houses under 400.
Understand your point. Thank you. I'm going to end it now and move to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes of meetings, public session, September 17, 2018. Sam, did you have any comment?
No, actually, I would move approval and release for public access.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next one on the agenda is for September 24, 2018.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And let's see, do we have, I'm trying to coordinate these dates here. October 15 we do have. Is there a motion for approval on October 15?
Oh, I move approval and release to public access.
All those in, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
And no minutes for the 22nd, and the 29th is still being prepared, as is the 17th, so we'll revoke that approval because I hadn't read through the dates when Sam kind of got the list together.
Great.
Next, we have individual selectmen's reports. Doug?
I had a meeting with the police chief and Lieutenant DeCosta this week. I was curious about the taxi inspections and how it's applied, and apparently it is very equally applied to the limo service. You know, we had that accident in Rhode Island, and it triggered me to think about how that was being done. I was actually hoping that they might agree to phase out the second inspection so that the taxis could have an easier time of it compared to Ubers and Lyft. But they feel strongly that it's important, and pointed out the fact that oftentimes they're inspecting beyond the level of what the regular inspectors are doing, because these are public service vehicles. And I learned a bit at the meeting, and it was interesting, and I kind of agreed that I won't push to eliminate that second inspection. But what it did bring up was the fact that I really hope that we can have some way of ensuring that the Ubers and the Lyfts are somewhat safe. I don't know how that's ever going to be
It's a big
done.
issue on the island,
Yeah, so it's going to be something we'll have to take up at one of these future meetings.
I think that part of that is it's state regulated.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we're really limited.
Yeah.
Sam?
Just 2 meetings. I went to the CPC meeting, only part of it, but they are listening to applicants. Included is the play space that Kathleen Haynes had recommended, and also the Nobsco Light renovation of the keeper's house now that they've completed the tower. But things are moving along methodically, and they're in that process of vetting these projects.
Great.
That's it.
Megan?
Just attended the precinct 8 and 9 meeting last week and got some great input and questions. I think there's definitely a little bit of work to do to just get ready for some of the questions that will be at town meeting. Also just noticing a lot of, frankly, some really positive discussion online around some of the items. One at the playground is one of them. So I'm hoping that people, you know, on social media, someone starts up a discussion, and, you know, sometimes folks are weighing in and they maybe haven't, you know, don't have that background information. But it was nice to see that the discussion around the playground, some folks kind of put some of that information out there into the public. So I hope that folks will kind of either look at the minutes of these meetings or revisit them around some of these really important community issues that are going to play out. The playground seemed to be sort of the last week a big point of discussion. So hopefully people will engage in that process.
It's great to make the facts available. Doug?
You reminded me, while I was not at that meeting, I was at the League of Women Voters solar presentation, which was very interesting discussion. The Jim Fox and the Tom Bott, the planner, were there to explain their positions, and it was a very good conversation. And I learned a lot about it, which is very relative to town meetings. So
That's great.
Happy to
And
share
then
that.
I want to bring up, we typically, go over who might want to be available to move a town meeting article or answer questions, that kind of thing. I'd like maybe Julian in his report to go through and call out what'll be handled by staff, and then we can know, it's not exactly on the agenda, so maybe we can take the same process as last year, which is just email if there's a matter that you want to kind of take hold of, but if you would just maybe go through the articles that, now Doug thought ahead here, the emeritus effect. Did you have any other report?
Just to report that I was at the Precinct 1 and 2 meeting, and one of the very positive comments I did receive was appreciation for the amount of detail that was put into the capital project, and specifically the page number references during the article itself that made it very easy for people to look up the information supporting the requests and the recommendations for the capital projects.
Same. That's the same thing I heard.
Great.
And
A nice job doing the precinct in 1 and 2 meeting.
He's had a
Shared
lot
it.
of experience.
And I wasn't sure whether Julian could just email us the ones that he thought that he and Jennifer were going to take care of, and then, as opposed to, I'm not sure if you're ready to do that tonight.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to take that up tonight, but happy to do that in a.
That makes more
follow-up.
sense. Great. And then town manager's report.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I was also pleased, as has been noted, in my case, to attend precincts 8 and 9, held at the Navigator this past Thursday, and good discussion and dialogue in that venue, focusing primarily on the multiple zoning-related issues to be considered at November's town meeting, which, as a reminder, starts on Tuesday, November 13th. Also, having received the FY20 budget requests and narratives from town departments, I'm beginning the internal review and analysis process. And as the board's aware, this is in anticipation of bringing a proposed FY20 annual operating budget to Selectmen no later than January 1st, as per the town charter. And as has been the case in the past, budget requests exceed anticipated revenues, available revenues by a few $1 million. Much analytic and deliberative work clearly lies ahead. That is no surprise and no change from past years. Also, on behalf of the town and the board, I want to thank our colleagues at Falmouth High School for their hospitality and assistance in facilitating our use of this high school venue, which has been certainly very helpful in discussing and receiving public comments on the important Main Street reconstruction project. And that concludes my remarks.
Here, Peter?
Nothing to report, thank you.
And just along that vein, just a thank you to FCTV for moving what is a usually seamless, setup that they have at Town Hall and coming here tonight to set this up. I know it requires a bit more coordination, but I think this was an incredibly important event for folks to be able to see at home if they're not able to participate either tonight or in the future.
Thanks. And final comment from Mark? Is it a score?
No, I just wanted to point out that the gentleman is correct. Meeting is listed as being in the Selectmen's meeting room and not here on the website.
Thank you for that information. We'll follow up.
Madam Chair, if I could just elaborate on that. So the agenda was posted for the high school location in the agenda center and in the town clerk's office. What I found is that there's a calendar on the homepage that also shows the meeting dates and the locations, and apparently that's somehow standardized in a different way. So the office manager did accurately post, anywhere you see the contents of the agenda, anywhere that actual agenda is posted, it shows the correct location. Obviously, we have a lesson learned here about the calendar section on the website. But the official posting is accurate.
Thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.